Okay. I'm Chris Bartley. I'm youth pastor or pastor to youth here at Pikeville United Methodist Church. I've been here for quite some time now. I'm actually going on my 23rd year, and I've been here 12 years full time, and then before that I was volunteer. Got a beautiful wife and 3 lovely kids that I just adore, and tons of other kids that are by proxy through youth ministry.
Yeah, I would think the list of kids or medical school students or people you've had influence on, is just thousands.
Sometimes it takes you by surprise. Because for me, each person has their own story, and we try to focus in on them. But when you step back and look at the big picture, it is kind of amazing.
It's amazing, the sphere of influence and the real impact you have in our community. But I suspect that Chris as a kid was not thinking, hey, I'm going to be a youth pastor with all this sphere of influence. Or maybe so, but what as a kid did you want to do?
Well, I wanted to play music. I went to college, music education major at the University of Kentucky, where I studied percussion. Loved my time there. Loved my music influence growing up. I went to Elkhorn City High School, and we had a marching band and did pep band and concert band and everything. I was fortunate enough to be in a drum corps, so the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I went to Boston, Massachusetts, and spent a summer up there touring the country and playing music in a circuit called Drum Corps International, DCI, for all you music heads out there. But we had a blast, and that, it really opened my eyes that the world was bigger than Elkhorn City. And got to see a different culture, a different way of life, got to meet brand new people who are still my friends to this day, and that was the summer of 1990, and we still talk weekly, some of us, and so it's a great community, great bond, and the Corps still goes today, and so we support it and pray for it together. So it's been, it was really a staple in my childhood was that summer. My friends always told me I'd be a lawyer because I love to talk to people. I love to argue one side or the other. A lot of times I like to argue both sides. But they said, you're going to be either a lawyer or a politician. And so, but my heart was really into music, and I didn't know then that God was preparing me in that for today, because I used that to help work with bands throughout the county. I help the music teachers. That gets me into different schools to be able to do what I do, be able to do youth ministry there. And not that I go in teaching, but I go in and they know who I am, and I bring compassion and a safe place for a lot of students, and just a friendly, sometimes friendly advice, or just a handshake or a hug for the teachers and the students. I try to be a resource to them in any way I can, but that music opens the door for me. Back then I wanted to be a band director, but God led me to something so much more.
Yeah, so obviously in this path, I wonder, do you have a dream job, or are you in your dream job?
I do have a dream job, and that is this job. I can't imagine being anywhere else, doing anything else at all in the world. I know without a doubt that God has called me to be here in this capacity, beyond anything else. Just because it's not all smooth sailing, but I just have a peace and a settledness about being here. Like I say, if I ever went anywhere, I hope it ends in the word beach. But I do know that I am called to be here. That not only is this home, but this is such a fertile place to be in youth ministry, for this stint of time. And it's changed, it's evolved since I started. And but still God keeps opening doors and providing ways to do things that He gives us the vision to do.
When you speak with such clarity or peace about I am living my dream job. I can't imagine anywhere else I'd rather be. What spurred you in this direction to even have? I mean, I know you talked about the Lord giving you a peace about this place right now, but what spurred you on this path in the first place?
Well, I go back to music. When you teach someone to play music, in a sense, you watch them come alive. You watch them open doors they never dreamed they could open, or you watch them experience things that they never dreamed they could experience. And so ministry is that times 10. When somebody realizes who they are in Jesus Christ and who they are in the gospel, they come alive. You always you read in the Bible about the dark to light. And that's really like when you go into a room for the first time and you turn the light on, you go, oh, I never dreamed this would be here. That's what it's like when somebody realizes the gospel in its fullness, or as good as we can understand it. It just energizes you. It keeps you going. To watch students wake up to their, people say students are, they look at the youth group and they say the youth group is the church of the future, and I argue that point. They're the church of right now. Because we are in a time, especially here, and I said ministry's changed a little bit, and in this season of our ministry, you realize that students want to change the world. They want to do something of purpose and of passion. What more than the gospel of Jesus Christ? What more than bringing hope and love to a world that's starving to death for it? I mean, there's also other things that are great things to work for, but we're talking about eternity. And so to watch them realize that they don't have to have a seminary degree, that they don't have to have a 4-point sermon, they don't have to have all these trainings and stuff to be able to share the gospel, but to have an impact point where they are, and that sphere of influence circulate from where they are. Like when you throw a pebble in the pond, that ripple goes out. And we tell them all the time, if you can change one person's life this week, can you imagine what it'd be like next week? Can you imagine? And then in the next week, if they do and you do, why, it's untelling what Pikeville could be like in just a month. Jesus and his disciples, 12 teenagers. And we don't think about that, but they were teenagers. Because whenever they return to the temple, he sends Peter down to get the fish, and goes, go get the tax out of they pull the tax out of the fish. And he says he had enough tax to pay for him and Peter. If you go back to Exodus, the temple tax was set at age 18. So that means the rest of the disciples were under 18 years old. So essentially, Jesus had a youth ministry. And he changed the world. So imagine what we could do here in Pikeville, how we could change this community, this area with youth ministry. Because teens have a sphere of influence in their parents, in the marketplace, in the community, and in the world, unlike any other age group, any other demographic. And so we try to show them how to leverage that for the gospel and teach them, give them opportunities to share the gospel and watch them come alive. Go back to the disciples. They spent time with Jesus learning, but they really didn't have an impact till he sent them to share the gospel. And that's whenever they experienced it and they came alive. And so that's what we try to do here as part of our ministry.
So seeing youth as the absolute, the possibility of changing an entire community.
Oh, I think it's the fulcrum.
Yeah, the fulcrum, exactly. So for you, when you think about your own place, space, call, in a sentence, Chris Bartley is called to, how would you finish that?
Make disciples that transform the world for Jesus Christ. I think without a doubt, pointing students to Jesus is what I'm called to do.
So as you make a huge impact in people, whether it's just that hug that one day at school to a student that you're pouring into from 6th grade till the rest of their lives, who's been that person for you? Who made the most impact on you to put you on this path?
Well, I don't know that there was a single person, almost like a Mount Rushmore.
Right, yes.
You know, I think back to my childhood, and there was a youth pastor named Tracy Cleveland, and he was studying at what then was Kentucky Christian College, and he would come to Elkhorn City and do youth ministry just on the weekends to earn money to help put himself through school. And we've had a chance to recently reconnect after years, 30 plus years, just to talk just for a moment about the impact that he had back then on my life, how he kind of opened that door for the very first time and just told me who Jesus was, and that it wasn't all condemning, that he was hope and there was love, that Jesus is both judge and father. And so he really opened the door for me. And then along the way, there's dots, there's names like Mark Walls, Quentin Schultz, Brad Smart, Mark Dickinson, that just poured into me. Jerry Bishop one time, he told me, he said, I can't wait to see what God's going to do in your life. So it's going to be so exciting. Just in a little group, we were having dinner one night, and this was 22 years ago, and so you think about those people who poured into me along the way, who took time on a Sunday afternoon to do a Bible study with just me, who really cultivated, who believed in me, that really pointed me in the right direction. Now, I'm not going to say it was a smooth path, but between the leadership opportunities and just the encouragement, and even to this day, the congregation that we serve here, I keep a letter in the door panel of my car that somebody gave to me 6 years ago. This elderly couple, the husband passed 2 years ago. I pull that out almost every week and read it because it's such an encouragement to me, just to keep going, because sometimes the days are long. But just those moments of encouragement along the way is really what's, and people pour into me. Then outside of that, taking time to study and to grow myself, because you keep pouring out, and eventually you run out. And so it's important to be poured back into. It's like a pitcher of water. Eventually it gets empty. And even on the converse side of that, like a sponge, if it's just full of water, it's going to get stagnant and mold. So you have to wring it out. So you pour out, you wring out, you pour out, you wring out. There's just this cycle that you got to be in. So I try to put myself around those people that pour into me and take those opportunities as often as I can.
Mm-hmm. So what did you do to get yourself on the career path that you are on? What did you do to position yourself?
Well, one of the names I mentioned was Mark Walls. He was chaplain at the hospital at the time, and he was volunteer. He was like volunteer of the millennium here, and he was leading a youth group, and he was an ordained elder in the Methodist church, and he was volunteering here doing youth ministry. And that's time we had another building that was out there. It's gone now, and so I thought, he said, why don't you come help me out? I said, oh, it'd be awesome. We'll come, we'll have pizza, we'll play games, we'll throw balloons, we'll do whatever, And I came, and there was about 60 kids here, 60 students in this sanctuary area, and he was going through the Gospel of Mark, verse by verse, just breaking it down. Wasn't a game, wasn't any pizza. He was just doing it. And I went, oh. And so my stereotype of what it should be was shattered that very first day. And since then, I've been around youth ministries that do games and all that, and that's all good and fun, and we do games and we have fun, But also, he showed me the importance of pouring out the truth. Because when the games and stuff, it'll all be gone one day. So they've got to be able to stand on their own 2 feet on what they believe that the Bible says. And it's our responsibility. It's not just a secondary thing, but it's our responsibility to unfold that as good as we can, as good as we can, as often as we can, to the students. And so that lit a fire in me. And I said, I want that. And so, so I became, volunteer and stuff. And Mark, he got sick and he's eventually passed. And then another youth pastor came and stuff, because I just didn't, feel like I could take the lead. And so another one came, and I learned under him. And then I thought, there was an empty pulpit at Elkhorn City, and they were looking for somebody to fill it. And I said, you know what? They came and talked to me a couple times. I said, I'll try this. So I was up there for about a year, just pulpit supply. And they loved me, and I loved them. I grew up in Elkhorn City. And so I had a passion for the area. I was a horrible pastor. Every week we loved each other, and they suffered through probably some of the worst sermons they had ever heard in their entire life. But I always tell the guy that followed me, I drove him down to a good number. He's going to look like a genius. But, it was in that experience that I learned that without a doubt I was called to youth ministry. Because I basically, I learned a lot of valuable things there. I learned Sunday comes next week, that you have a great Sunday, but then there's another one. Monday starts a brand new cycle, and so there's this repetitiveness that you've got to be ready for. I've learned how to visit, how to love people. I had to wade into some muddy water with some people with illnesses and family situations, so you learn how to do some dynamics with that. But also, I learned that my call was in student ministry. Quentin Schultz, he went through purpose-driven life with me. It was me and him and one other guy, and so we sat in his office and just kind of went through it every Sunday afternoon. Mark Dickinson, he believed in me, and he gave me the full-time position, moved me from volunteer to full-time. Brad Smart, he would take time and pour into me. And so all those names along the way really just affirmed everything that I'd felt. I always knew I wanted to work with students because I was going into music education. My dream was to be a high school band director and to make a difference in students' lives. So I always knew I wanted to work with students, but this was a brand new way.
Sure, so that theme of always pouring into students just looks different than what you originally thought. Obviously, life always presents obstacles and challenges. Throughout your life, how have you been able to navigate, work through those obstacles to kind of live out your call?
Well, I think it's important to put solid people around you. I've always had that solid friends, and by that it's, you look on Facebook, I've got 2,000 friends, and really they should change that term to acquaintance, because in my life I've probably got 4 or 5 friends who I can just pick up the phone and they will be here. And it's in those moments, when my grandfather used to say, when the rubber hits the road, who's going to be left? And those friends, and sometimes we'll go a month, 2 months, and not really even talk. And some of them live away, and some of them are right here. And we will just reconnect, and they're there, we would get in a car and drive to Virginia Beach today. In fact, one time I got in a car and drove to St. Louis just because somebody needed me there that I'm really close to. And again, that's a discipleship model. Jesus, he spoke to the crowds. He had 12 that he was with. there was only 3 that he said he loved. You know, and so his sphere of influence was down to those guys, and so you not that he didn't love the rest of them, but it's just different with your core friends, and you know, and like I say, there's a core group of people that I stay in contact with, that we keep hold each other accountable. We check in on each other. John Wesley used to ask, "How is it with your soul?" And that seems to, we don't ask that, but that's an understood. How's it going? We ask it just, you know, that's the new way we say, how's it going? And a lot of times, you know, with just passerbys, we'll say, and you get what we call the Christian F word, I'm fine. And really inside you're broken and you're just looking for a way out. Life's not been perfect, you know. I've experienced some pretty dark times, and I've asked Jesus to wade out into some pretty muddy waters with me. But he's never let me down, and so those people, and you know, and that's a fluid group sometimes. Sometimes, you know, one or two will change over the course of a lifetime. But you got to know who you can trust, and who. Sometimes, you know, like I say, that's people that are here. And sometimes you need somebody who's away, who's removed from the situation, that can see it from a different perspective, who has kind of an overview. And also somebody you can talk to things that not going to make its way around town. I think that's very important, especially as a pastor, you know. So that's kind of my thing, you know. I lay on my wife a lot. She is really my sounding board. She is, I can't even say the things that we experience together, we pray for, we just do together, because there's not a move that we do that we don't pray for together, or we don't discuss together, that and the other thing is, it's okay that she tells me no. You know, she can say, I just don't think this is going to work, or I'm worried about this, and it's an immediate and an honest place to be. And I think those things all combined is what helps navigate. You know, I wish there was a GPS for life. You know, Mom would always say, recalculating. But you should have took a left. But you know, but those people, I think, are kind of my GPS system for ministry and for life.
So with navigating the obstacles, you carry this title that has there's a reference to it. You are a youth pastor, right? Mm-hmm. You are clergy in our community, and with every type of clergy, there comes particular stereotypes, mm-hmm. right? So youth pastor, you got to have a man bun, mm-hmm. you got to be social media monster, and you got to be the hippest, coolest guy in town. How have you navigated the stereotypes to be you in youth ministry?
Well, you know, obviously, I don't fit that stereotype. And it's funny because when we go on youth trips, our youth group plays Spot the Youth Pastor. And as we drive by, we spot the guy in the plaid shirt and the man bun and an iPad, and you know, all the stereotypical thing, and so that led us to spot the worship pastor, and so there's two different distinct looks. They're close, but they're distinct and different. But anyway, I don't have the look. I don't, you know, I'm not on social media like crazy, and often, you know, we laugh about what I'm not, but I am who I am, to quote Popeye. And I'm secure in who I am. I'm secure because I know that Jesus is the bedrock of who I am. And in who I am, you know, I love people as hard as I can. I try to inspire people as hard as I can. And I point people to Jesus as hard as I can. Now, I don't always get those right. Sometimes I do mess up. But I'm still true to who I am. And in that, opens up, it evolves over time. I mean, whenever you're 30, you try to be 20, but something happens, and you say, you know what, this is just what it is. And so it's funny because one of our students, I was hanging out with his family the other day, and he said, they started calling me Chris Bartley because all I wear is youth group t-shirts. And I said, it's not a bad thing, And so I think, I do try to wear youth group shirts or my shirt with the cross and flame, because it is an identifying mark. And sometimes in the middle of a day, your plans change and you have to run to the hospital. And so that's an identifying mark that helps you get into the places you need to get to sometimes. I'm a pastor in flip-flops, and I come to see this person or something. But I don't try to be anything that I'm not. And I hope that that never changes.
Well, with that breeds such almost a sanctuary for others to be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you said earlier, you've asked Jesus to kind of wade out into a lot of muddy waters with you. So you do that all the time with people. So obviously, people have all kinds of life-changing conversations with you. Mm-hmm. So when they do, they come to your office or they see you somewhere or they're texting you and they say, "Hey, Pastor Chris, I just have no idea what I'm supposed to do with my life." What would be some advice you would have for people who are trying to figure it out?
Well, I try to always point them to Jesus and say, what do you think will glorify God the most? Obviously, no matter what that is, no matter what you choose to do with your life, you can always glorify God. Some of the best sermons I've ever heard came from a plumber. And he would just come in this store where I was working, and he would just talk about Jesus. I go to a place here in town, just, they make t-shirts, but I go because the guy loves to talk about Jesus. And so, again, I try to put myself in those positions to be filled up. And so this guy loves to talk about Jesus. And so he's, in some aspects, is a better minister than I'll ever be, because he's going to be in contact with people that I'll never be in contact with. Because a lot of times when I step into the room, the tempo changes, even though I'm just who I am. Several years back there was a flood over Johns Creek, and so we were going around delivering meals, and I knew this group of guys, and I knew this resident and stuff, and so they were working, and you could hear them, some swear words coming, and whenever I stepped in, they're like, "Oh, sorry, we didn't know you were here," and I'm like, "Oh, it's just me," and so it does change the thing, but you think about the ministry opportunity that people have in their workplace is just amazing. And being a student pastor, you look at the high school, every 4 years we get the opportunity to send missionaries out into the world. They're going somewhere. And so we got to make sure they're ready to be ministers no matter what they do. So first, we try to make sure they're ready for that. Then one of my favorite things that a counselor did with me one time is in any situation that you're trying to make a big decision, we call it the analog version. Get out a pencil and paper, and on one side write everything good that could come from this, and on the other side write down everything bad, and then look at that for a little while and just ask God to open up what it is about this decision that you're getting ready to make. That just the good outweigh the bad, it's the pros and the cons. You can word that any way you want, but in that list, when you look at that on paper, and you can put it in your head, but there's something about writing it down and just looking at it that helps you process. And so we encourage students to do that, whether it be, where am I going to school, what kind of career path should I take, those type decisions. Put it on good old-fashioned pencil and paper, and just chew through it and see how it is that it just weighs up. It's like the old scales of justice, the good and the bad. But there's something about putting it on piece of paper that helps you process. And so we really encourage students to do that. We encourage students to seek counsel from people who are in that profession or have made those types of decisions. We encourage, I am not the end-all authority on anything. People, and that's the thing about being in ministry. People expect you to be like Jesus Jr. And I am not anywhere close to that. But that's, again, you go back to the stereotype, that's the perception. You make all the right decisions. You say, well, if you could take a step into my world, you would see how chaotic mess it really is. But out of the chaos come, God creates this order, and so we point people to people who are way smarter than we will ever be, and people with wisdom. And there's a difference in wisdom and just being smart. And so we try to point people on that wisdom path in any decision that they make. And you would be surprised, from where should I go to school? Should I date this person? Should I break up? Should I, And so we try to help them just process. We don't make decisions for them. We help them, because if, I could say, well, here's what you should do. But they didn't learn anything in that process. And part of it is, one day I'm not going to be here. They're going to be somewhere else, or I'm just going to be gone. And so they've got to be able to make sound decisions on their own. And that's part of the ministry process. You unfold the gospel, the story of God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit as good as you can. And eventually they're going to have to stand on their own 2 feet, whether it be outside of fraternity, when they're getting married, if they get married, what kind of decisions are we going to make? And they've got to be ready to make those decisions on their own, because you're not going to be there to help them make it.